All right, guys, we're on. What's up, guys?
What's the tea, Molly?
Do you guys like this breaking news music? We are breaking with the fact that the Caps have won Game 4. Check it out, guys. Last night, here's your footage. Awesome stuff. Isn't that great? There's a little video here to show you guys. Check it out. We're going to roll through some of this. This was a crowd taken from our digital manager, Emily Stone. She took this video last night. She was down there outside Capital One Arena on the National Portrait Gallery steps. You can see them right there. She had an awesome video. We're all excited.
Emily living life, capturing all this footage.
She was killing it there. Look at that. I know some of the videos have on some vertical. You can tell people cheering. Awesome stuff, guys. So we're starting with that story because it's one of the bigger news items.
I was in the area. Parking was a mess. It was terrible. There was no place to park at all, but it was good. Like, you could tell there were so many people in just different restaurants everywhere lining the street. It was
awesome. You could see, you could see just how packed it is. And really, DC hasn't seen this, obviously, for so long. 1992, last time the Redskins. There's a still picture, too. So she took a few photos right outside Capital One Arena, and you just haven't seen it that packed since, like, major, political rallies and events and marches. And so it's cool to see. It kind of scrolls through here. But I know our newsroom is like really excited about it. We've been talking about it all morning on the air and stuff. And one of the bigger debates was Bryce Harper. He's from Vegas. Right. I know some of you guys on the stream are from Vegas that watch. He, has jumped on because it's his hometown team. It's a brand new team. So the debate was, should he have shown off his Vegas gear in DC, the sports city that he works for, but is still prideful of course, the Nats. What do you guys think? It's kind of a debate.
Is it? Why?
I don't care as much.
Yeah. He's just supporting, where he's from. I don't find, it to be an issue.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it just because, you gotta support your own team.
There you go, guys. Let him live.
So that was the argument, and then it was like, should he have worn like something signifying red like underneath or something? It's like, well, it's two teams. They're competing against each other. You're picking one team. That he showcased it kind of out there. A lot of people on Twitter were saying, stay at home, watch it with your wife at home, enjoy. Maybe showcase it at home and not like out there.
Well, maybe Bryce wanted to show up at the stadium and support his team. I mean, that's essentially what he did.
Yeah, no, it's true.
It's still exciting for him because his team made it there too. So
exactly. And you don't want him like fake fanning.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Like, I think he tweeted, I wish to pull this up, but basically he tweeted something like, I'll always wear red and come out for the Nats. They're my team. Obviously, I play for them. And he's really one of the stars that we have every season. And then, tonight, on this night, I'm going to show my pride for Vegas. So that's what he did. People debating it. Let us know what you guys think. We're excited to go into Game 5. It's in Vegas on Thursday. So people are saying, there's also the debate, do we want them to win there, or do we want to bring the Stanley Cup home here if we win? If we lose out in Vegas, we'll play again Game 6 here in D.C. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
I know not everyone here is resting on their laurels like in this newsroom. Some people are a little superstitious, and they're kind of like, DC has lost it before in the finals, so let's just like cross our fingers still.
That's negative energy.
So you've seen sports kind of be up and down.
For sure, yeah. It's a roller coaster. I personally kind of want them to win there, just so everybody, like the watch party will be free for people who
what you watch it here.
So that's also like diehard fans go there super early, and everybody's gonna be hyped up regardless.
Yeah,
it'd be good to just get it out of the way.
In there. Okay, that's a good one. Good point.
And as a person who's not a fan of, say, sports, I just don't watch it. It's not that I'm not a fan. I've actually been keeping tabs on this, so it's definitely piqued people who I know don't watch hockey, either their interest, so they're like, oh yeah, like DC's actually coming up. So just sending out, my well wishes.
Good.
Because I know you guys got this.
Yes, exciting. It's an exciting week in sports, and you're right, even people who are like not usually, fans are coming out, and hockey being one of the big four here in the city, we're all excited. Speaking of sports though, let's go to this news item. Did you guys hear about this? People talking about this as well. President Trump tweeting yesterday. So this was yesterday's tweet, but we have sort of like the rebuttal and the response from the Philadelphia mayor. He basically disinvited the Eagles football team to the White House. They beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl this year. He stated, among other tweets, you know, he's had a tweet storm sort of over the past day, said that only a few number of players decided to come, so they canceled it, and instead they're going to change it into more of a Celebration of America event.
Okay.
So that actually, guys, we're going to be live streaming it on our digital platforms here around 3 o'clock. It'll be something held at the White House, sort of a celebration. We're not exactly sure what to expect, but they said more of sort of a patriotic celebration rather than an honoring of the Eagles. And so as a rebuttal, actually, guys, the Philadelphia mayor came back on Twitter, Jim Kenney. Yeah, check this out. And he said, hey guys, you know, I'm proud of our Eagles on and off the field. Our players represent the diversity of our nation, free to express opinions. Disinviting them only proves the president is not too pretty. So that was his opinion there. And then he had a full statement that you can click on actually on his site there, the government website of Philadelphia. But you know, they had their big parade this year, and everyone was excited to see that win. And so, you know, this is just another statement by the president. He's made his, you know, last minute decisions of changing certain things before, and I mean, it is what it is. What do you guys think? I mean, it's definitely he was unhappy sort of with how some of the players reacted, I think, in the Football League this year with the national anthem, and there's that. And there's also the players that don't necessarily side with him that weren't going to show up. A lot of people saying, you just were worried that this wasn't going to be a big show, big fanfare at the White House wasn't going to look good. Yeah. Others saying, you know, you're making it political. I don't know. It's kind of, it's interesting. We're going to take it either way. We're going to see what comes up on our stream, but kind of a bummer because every year, you know, they do honor the teams, and it's been kind of fun to show you guys, like the NCAA champs have come, and the NBA usually, you know, comes, all the champions come, but this was kind of a point of contention yesterday, you know?
Yeah, interesting. What do you think?
Any thoughts?
Yeah. I don't know. I think that there's been such a big debate in sports in general, just that whole thing, and you know, you can't force somebody to go somewhere that they're not gonna be. So
yeah,
that's true.
I don't know. I think,
and that could even be worse for it could look worse for them,
right?
You know,
it could look worse on both sides. If you think about it, because if they don't show all of their support, then where does the team stand? And teams are supposed to be, you know, working as one. So
yeah,
that's true. All not going is probably the better option than just having a few.
Than having 10 or so. Yeah, I do wonder kind of who would have shown up and like what they would have done, and maybe the president in that group was sort of afraid of them showing some other signs of protest during. Like, who knows?
Yeah.
I mean, really,
those Philly fans.
Anything can happen right now, right?
And maybe like if you look at it, it's maybe a sigh of relief for both parties. So maybe it's like a good neutralization.
Good point.
So who knows?
Another hot topic today, guys, part of our social scoop, Miss America. Did you guys hear about this? They are taking away the swimsuit competition and I believe the evening gown competition, the formal wear, I believe, kind of trying to make it not about, I believe, I got to double check on that, but definitely we were talking about the bikini swimsuit competition. You can see some footage from previous years here. They want to make it more of a scholarship, more of a competition. I know Gretchen Carlson, who won in the 90s, had a statement about this, and she was saying that. She was advocating for the fact that this isn't, you know, a pageant about one's bodies or judgment on one's bodies, and that's what they're changing it to. So interesting kind of there. What do you guys think? That's changing sort of the whole idea of that pageantry and sort of what it's focused on, right?
Right. If you look at their Instagram, they actually put out a little video. They called it Miss America 2.0.
Oh, okay.
And in there, it starts off with a little bikini, and then it disappears. So that's essentially just
they're trying to show that.
Exactly. They're trying to show that that's completely being eliminated. But I'm bummed out that the evening gown is going to be eliminated. If that's
true, I got to double check on that. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, it's changing. I always saw Miss America as pretty separate from Miss USA. I mean, in what they do and what they show, the questions that are asked, you know, sort of the levels and stuff. But is it part of sort of the ushering in of like what the new movement that we've kind of seen as of late with women, kind of asserting more of their rights, the Me Too movement, the sort of resurgence of the feminist movement now, kind of. I mean,
I think so.
Less judgmental. I kind of miss it too because I do know that women work hard in fitness to work on their bodies and like they're proud of it, and I can resonate with that. Yeah, and so I don't know. That's interesting, kind of up for debate.
I think what from the article that I read, it said that the judges are no longer going to be judging on appearances, which is, I think, in tangent with them taking away the bikini and then doing the nightgown. It's more of a, we're not going to focus on the body anymore. We're going to focus on the
questioning, the platform, right, and their substance.
I think that might encourage more women to go out and do it, just because body image is so like
that's
important
true.
to certain people that they might be a little afraid and hesitant to doing something like that.
Yeah,
I know I shy away from things like that.
I'm interested to know like who was in that boardroom and sort of how it came to be and why they were like, oh, we're going to bring this to the table and talk about this being a change. Kind of interesting and definitely an ushering in of a new time. Also, sort of in the beauty side, guys, check this out. Crayola is teaming up with the fashion brand ASOS, if you guys are familiar with them, to create a new vegan makeup line. Actually, the deets are pretty interesting. I know. It's a 58 piece set, and it ranges from $15 to $40. Crayons, mascara, different shades of blushes and foundations. And the names are all taken from actual shades of Crayola crayons.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is cute. The entire collection is 100% vegan. Very interesting. We all grew up with Crayola crayons. Look how awesome and bright the colors are. They're really, it's fun to watch this video even.
Yeah.
Kind of cool. And a little shout out to ASOS because I'm actually wearing an ASOS dress today.
Love
so
it.
it's kind of in tandem with that. But that's kind of cool, right? It's kind of weird. Do you think people will buy it? I mean,
absolutely. I mean, we've been making art with it for how many years now?
We
now
have
we're
to
doing
stay
this.
inside the lines, though.
You know what? I like coloring outside.
I like that one. Good one, guys.
That's a good one.
Make it a deep question. No, but I thought that was cute,
awesome.
right?
Yeah, because honestly, I feel like that's what makeup is. It all makes us these amazing artists. This is the canvas, and we just do whatever we want with it. And with the makeup community, really, really like it's taking over social media. I mean, a lot of these women who do or who are considered anyways have found their careers through social media, and there are people that I follow. I don't know if you all follow like some amazing makeup artists where I learn from, so I'm definitely going to be taking all these crayons and applying.
No, it's true. It's really fun to follow like sort of where makeup is going. It's just the artistic sort of realm of it. It's kind of fun. I know we kind of play around with it. And especially the news biz. People love to hear that. I thought it was kind of a cool social story that just popped up on our radar today. So interesting. We'll keep a lookout for that, the vegan line from Crayola. And then, okay, some celebrity news. Would be remiss if we didn't include this, right? I know Bryce really wanted to include this.
I just want to know what she's eating, guys.
Let's check it out.
That's what I want to know.
Baby True Thompson revealed a new video on Khloe's story. Khloe Kardashian, Tristan Thompson's baby. There she is.
Why is she so big?
Like a little lady.
Isn't that adorable? Let's play it again. She sneezed. Let me play it over. Look at this.
Baby True. Oh, is the cutest little munchkin. Hey, Mama. Hi, Baby True. Looking like a little lady. Ooh.
She laughed, and then she put True on her story, and that's Baby True. And interestingly, in the news, that's Khloe and Tristan Thompson's baby. Tristan Thompson playing for the Cavaliers. The Cleveland Cavs still in the finals with the Warriors. They play their next game on Wednesday. So looking forward to that. Whenever I see Tristan make a play or something, I'm like, I think about Khloe and like that the whole thing that went down in the relationship, and sort of, you wonder what's happening, where that's going.
Right.
Rumor has it, or the recent celebrity news I was hearing was that she was staying in Cleveland to be with him, and she obviously has her daughter. But the articles are saying, and Kris Jenner is out there saying that Khloe plans to come back to Los Angeles soon, and she's like making her way back. So I don't know if that will be sort of a separation for a moment or forever. Who knows? But she'll be back to be with family and like bring her baby.
Which is where everybody essentially is, right? And now
her people, Calabasas and all that.
Her whole family's there, which makes sense in my world. And plus, she has her home there.
Yeah.
So it would only make sense for her to move back.
I guess so.
I think their family is just really tight knit. So
true. They're part of a TV family too.
Having all of them in one area is probably really important to them. So.
And so we'll see. Yeah, we'll see also what happens to her, baby daddy, like Tristan, if he wins or what happens with that. But that's their baby.
What he'll do after, right? Will he follow her?
Yeah, I don't know. That's also a question.
The point of the matter here is the baby is ready to hit the freaking what is it? Court.
Yeah,
guys, I'm like so tongue-tied. Court, she's so big. Like she's not missing a meal.
Oh, she is getting big.
How many months is she? 2, maybe? I feel like she was just born yesterday.
A couple, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm really good at like, keeping everything secret.
Yes, they really are.
They are.
That's true.
They are. So an interesting story, and Bryce, you brought this to our attention today.
Oh, yeah.
Really cool in the world of sort of economy and helping others. There's a new story about Walmart employees. What is the scoop?
So the scoop with that is Walmart is going to be sending its employees to college for $1 a day. And the cool thing with that is once they finish the program, or there's 3 selective colleges. Hold on, let me pull out my phone.
Hey, Mike.
There's 3 colleges that the employees can attend. And once they complete that, whether it be their associates or their bachelors, they don't necessarily have to remain at Walmart. Because if you think about it, a lot of employers, they will pay for your tuition, but then you have to work X amount of years right afterwards. But Walmart is saying, you know what, just go to college. You're going to be paying $1 a day, which is kind of like their co-pay, if you will. And once they graduate, they can essentially do what they want. So the 2 areas of study that they need to focus on are business management and I don't remember the other one, guys. I'm so sorry. But it does correlate with business. And the 3 universities, though, that they have to attend are the University of Florida, Bradman University in California, and Bellevue University in Nebraska.
So they are limiting it to 3 different universities that are offering this to these employees.
To their employees.
Kind of cool.
And I feel like a lot of people can definitely take advantage of that if they have online courses, right? You as a college student, they do offer a lot of that now, right?
I took 18 credits this past semester, and 3 of them were online, and that was definitely a help to my workload, I guess. Because being able to do it in the comfort of my home and doing it on my time, it was helpful.
Good. Awesome. Good perspective from a college student right here. Right. Awesome. So true. Kind of a cool, more serious sided story to end with. But anyway, we're spending a little more time on the social scoop today because it is kind of a quiet day in the newsroom. You can see it behind us here. We're live at Fox 5 DC in Upper Northwest Washington, and we have a couple top stories to show you. I'm going to take a quick moment to help the photog you just saw come up to me to get him some files for a later story that we're doing on the Capitals win. Matt Acklin is going to be down there getting in the live scene. All those roads are, like Jackie said, are still blocked off. They're going to be blocked off for the many days of the stretch that it takes for the end to kind of come, whether or not the Caps win the Stanley Cup or not. They're going to block off those roads surrounding where they play, the Capital One Arena. Matt Acklin will be down there. So we're cutting some video footage for him, and then we'll be back with some of the top stories of today with you guys. Thank you, Raisa. Thanks, Jackie, for joining, for hanging out with us today, talking some cool social stories, some good stuff in the news today. So we're happy to be here with you guys on this Tuesday. We'll be right back. All right, guys, we are back in the newsroom. Thank you for joining us for our social scoop and some more news of the like. We have some top stories to bring to you in just a moment. But first, some really sad breaking news, actually. You'll see it at the bottom of your screen here. Fashion designer Kate Spade apparently dead at the age of 55 from an apparent suicide in her New York City apartment. We're just getting this word in from TMZ, so it's a bit of breaking news here. But law enforcement sources confirm that she was found this morning at about 10:20 a.m. And from an apparent hanged herself in her New York City apartment. If you remember, she was only 55. In the 80s, she got her start in Mademoiselle magazine. She actually married, or she moved in rather, with Andy Spade, David Spade's brother. And she met Andy while working in college in a clothing store. This is in the 80s. And then they launched Kate Spade handbags back in the 90s. It blossomed into a full line, fashion, shoes, jewelry, everything. I know a lot of you guys probably know the name. But another really, really sad piece of news. Our newsroom just sort of broke out with the news. We were kind of all talking about it, and it's just coming down our radar. So not too much information besides knowing what we know about her life and knowing that she is apparently dead at the age of 55. She sold her company in 2007 to raise her daughter, but then got back into the game recently in the past couple of years. She was only 55, and this morning we're hearing an apparent suicide in New York City. I'm hoping that I do not have any more mic issues. I know you guys were saying it was a bit scratchy, so we're going to make sure we work on that, hoping that you guys can hear it loud and clearly. So again, besides this bit of sad breaking news, we're going to go to some of our top stories of the day, which involve a lot of things, some various political news, and yeah, and the like. And also really interesting back here at home yesterday, some Gold Star families, those are relatives of people who have died in action, were honored at the White House, and our own Tom Fitzgerald was there for that report. So we're going to show you his little story on that yesterday and how it impacted us here at Fox 5 as a whole as well, kind of a personal connection to that honoring of these families at the White House, where Melania Trump was just for the first time kind of seen after her kidney surgery. She was there at this event. So take a look at some of the top stories.
Details on this. Negotiations are underway both in the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea and in Singapore, the site of next week's summit. In a Singapore bar, diplomacy is just a drink away. An enterprising bartender mixing cocktails called the Trump and the Kim, preparing for a summit that is looking more likely by the day. The White House even talking about the specific schedule.
I can also tell you the schedule for tentatively for that first meeting will be on June 12th at 9 a.m. Singapore time and take place June 11th, 9 p.m. East Coast time.
As for that strangely oversized letter that a North Korean delegation dropped off for President Trump last week, the White House will not disclose its contents, only saying that they were interesting. But there are some perhaps positive signs. Kim Jong-un has recently ousted 3 top generals and installed new loyalists in what may be an effort to consolidate power and usher in a new era. But in Congress, some skepticism. Democrats are concerned that the president may be desperate to make a deal. A number of them have signed off on a list of requirements. The deal must permanently eliminate North Korea's nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, suspend missile tests, and allow robust inspections.
The president needs to be willing to take time to construct a good deal. And if he finds that one is not achievable, the president must be willing to walk away from the table.
And those drinks, by the way, cost $12.60, signifying the date, the 12th of June. And we assume at this point that the date and the drink prices will not be changing. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
I think I did the right thing. I defended the Constitution.
In a testy interview on NBC News, a defiant former President Bill Clinton refused to accept any more responsibility for his affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Looking back on what happened then, through the lens of Me Too now, do you think differently or feel more responsibility?
No, I felt terrible then. And I came to grips with it.
Did you ever apologize for it?
No, yes, and nobody believes that I got out of that for free. I left the White House $16 million in debt.
A few hours after the interview aired, Lewinsky responded, saying she's grateful to the myriad people who have helped me evolve plus gain perspective in the past 20 years.
Monica up top! Straight ahead, Monica!
She then shared a link to her op-ed in Vanity Fair from 3 months ago in which she said, quote, "He was my boss. He was the most powerful man on the planet. He was 27 years my senior with enough life experience to know better. He was, at the time, at the pinnacle of his career, while I was at my first job out of college."
Do you feel like you
thought
owe her an apology?
No, I do. I do not. I've never talked to her, but I did say publicly on more than one occasion that I was sorry.
Clinton's comments are now being criticized by the left.
This is one of the key reasons why we have Trump today.
Even longtime Clinton friend and mega fundraiser, the former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, didn't think that apology was enough.
I wish he'd said today that he'd said many times, I apologized, publicly apologized, felt horrible for the actions that he did, and moved on.
The Democratic Party was already moving away from being the party of the Clintons, but the former president was still a popular surrogate heading into the midterms. Now several Democratic strategists say those candidates may no longer want his public support.
They certainly won't be inviting them on the campaign trail. Maybe they'll still be happy to have them come raise money for them behind closed doors.
And sexual harassment is a huge issue for Democratic voters heading into the midterms. According to a CNN poll last month, 80% of Democrats described it as extremely or very important to them. In Washington, Kristen Fisher, Fox News.
Advocates for same-sex rights denouncing the U.S. Supreme Court for siding with a Christian baker who refused to make a cake for a gay wedding.
If you are open to business in the public, then your responsibility is to not discriminate against anybody else, whether you agree with them or not.
But some folks say they're happy with the court's decision.
I'm just so grateful that our Constitution was supported.
The Baker's supporters cheering what they see as an apparent victory for religious liberty. One bakery customer believes the core issue is actually about letting business owners do whatever they feel is best for them.
And if they want to hurt themselves financially with their decisions, that's their decision.
Could the ruling lead to new protections for marginalized groups like LGBTQ?
Protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity are civil rights issues, and they will be enforced.
Since the Supreme Court's ruling only affects this specific case, the couple at the center of the entire debate does not expect the issue to go away anytime soon.
All we've been doing is fighting for the right to be treated equally, and I don't think today's decision changed that.
Later this week, Supreme Court justices will consider whether to hear the case of a Washington state florist who declined a longtime customer's request to do flowers for his same-sex ceremony. In Los Angeles, Robert Gray, Fox News.
More trouble for Paul Manafort. The former Trump campaign chairman is now accused of witness tampering. The claim relates to his federal tax and lobbying case. He's pleaded not guilty to charges of failing to disclose lobbying work for a foreign government. In this case, Ukraine. Manafort is out on bail on house arrest awaiting trial and allegedly contacted 2 witnesses, both former business associates, trying to coach their stories about his lobbying practices. Manafort reportedly had help from someone identified only as Person A. The pair repeatedly reached out by phone as well as through an encrypted messaging program. Doing so would be a violation of Manafort's bail. Prosecutors have filed a motion asking a federal judge to revise the terms of his pre-trial release. A judge could also revoke it entirely, sending Manafort back to jail until trial. The new claims are likely to draw the ire of President Trump, who's never shied away from expressing his displeasure at the entire special counsel probe.
The president knows that the special counsel isn't needed because, once again, he hasn't done anything wrong. There was no obstruction, no collusion.
He recently attacked the FBI and Justice Department for failing to inform him Manafort was being investigated when he was hired to lead the 2016 presidential campaign. The president tweeting he would never have chosen Manafort as campaign chair. The alleged contacts occurred earlier this year, around the same time Manafort was indicted by a grand jury. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
And guys, we are here in Washington as well, bringing you the breaking report that Kate Spade, fashion designer Kate Spade, has been found dead in her New York City apartment at the age of 55. Really a rather sad case that sort of just circulated around the newsroom. We're trying to gather as much as we can about this. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of information out there, but this picture that we are taking from Getty Images here, our sister station in Orlando, pulled this picture of Kate Spade here. Law enforcement officials say that she was found from an apparent suicide this morning at around 10:20 a.m. She was found by housekeeping staff inside the Park Avenue apartment, and they say that she did leave a note at the scene. So we know that officials were not authorized to divulge any more details from this ongoing investigation when they spoke to the AP on the condition of anonymity, and the officials did not know what the note said. So again, guys, there was a note found at the scene of her very unfortunate death here, a breaking piece of information that we're talking about. It's circulating throughout the newsroom, and we initially saw it from TMZ, but now stations are starting to pick it up here. Fashion designer Kate Spade, she moved in with Andy Spade, the brother of David Spade, in the 80s, and she got her start in fashion in the magazine Mademoiselle, and then she kind of moved into that world, started designing jewelry and handbags and lines of clothing, and took a little hiatus from that in 2007, and then kind of went back to it in the past couple of years. But I'm sure with this piece of information and all this news breaking, we're going to hear more about that, and possibly even, very unfortunately, very sad situation here, possibly even what she left as a note behind, because this type of thing really does stun sort of the celebrity community, the fashion community, and anyone that sort of knows her as a name. I know a lot of us were kind of shocked to hear that, and very bizarre, but you just, you never know what people are going through in these days, and I know I was quite surprised to hear about her as well. So let us know if you're in the live chat, guys, if you have any comments or thoughts. Again, there's not a ton of information circulating. If you're just coming on with us, all we know is that law enforcement officials say that designer Kate Spade was found dead in her apartment this morning on Park Avenue. She was found by housekeeping staff, and an apparent suicide, hanging herself at the age of 55. And that is what we know from there. I'm going to go back to TMZ's report to see if there's anything else on the story. But really just the fact that, people are starting now to look into her legacy in the fashion world and her life and how she sort of started in the business and what possibly has happened up to this point. Again, guys, more information as we have it. We'll be right back. So a little bit of new information, guys, coming in on this. Again, there just aren't too many details. They're very slowly trickling in, but we're hearing that Kate Spade possibly, she was found, it was confirmed that she was found by a housekeeper and she was using a red scarf tied to a doorknob in her hanging. So some kind of very scary, specific details to her death. She leaves behind a 13-year-old daughter, Frances, for whom her brand new line, Frances Valentine, was started. She started this in 2016. It was a new fashion brand that she was sort of branding after her hiatus in 2007. She met her husband, Andy Spade, way back working at a clothing store. They met at Arizona State University, and then they kind of launched their line of Kate Spade handbags and fashion accessories in the 90s. So definitely a bigger name of the early 90s and really spanning those 20 some odd 30 years up to now. Again, some sad details coming out about her hanging in the New York City apartment. She was found by housekeepers. Officials say her husband was at the scene when they were gathering the information. They're continuing to investigate that, but her husband was there. No word about her daughter at the time. Again, her daughter's 13 years old, and we are told that Ms. Spade left a note. No word about what that note said. Officials were not able to gather that information. They did not read it. So we're going to kind of keep our ear to some of these news outlets and see what we can gather in the newsroom here. But that is the latest, guys. We're seeing this all kind of come in just as you are. That happened around 10:20 a.m. this morning in New York City. Very scary bit of information here. So quite sad. Thank you guys for all your comments. Let us know if you have any thoughts. Feel free to chat it up in the chat. And we're here in the Washington, D.C. newsroom, kind of filtering through all of this from New York and from L.A. and getting all these reports in. So you can imagine it's kind of, frantic to get this breaking piece of information. But we'll put it all together for you. And if we hear anything more, we'll bring that to you. On a little more of a happier note, guys, there was a meeting for Gold Star families. Those are the families, the relatives of those who have had relatives die in the military, in battle, heroically. Our Tom Fitzgerald was outside the White House yesterday recounting a story of one for whom this ceremony was celebrated, and here's that story.
Gold Star families are the relatives of U.S. military personnel that were killed in battle. One of the honored invitees here at the White House tonight is Diana Pike. Now, Diana was a longtime manager, friend, and colleague of many at Fox 5 WTTG. You may remember she was presented a portrait of her son live on the air. Christian Pike died on March 13, 2013 in Germany as a result of combat injuries suffered in Afghanistan. Chief Petty Officer Pike was assigned to a U.S. Navy unit, was shot in the head during a firefight. He was part of a 5-man team fighting 16 to 18 enemy troops. Now, despite a 10-hour battle, about half of the enemy who attacked Petty Officer Pike's unit were killed in that battle. Diana spent yesterday at Arlington National Cemetery visiting Christian's grave in Section 60, but will tell you Christian's death is something she deals with every day.
It's been 5 years now, and it doesn't get any easier. It changes a bit, but he's just not here. There's no phone calls, there's no emails, there's no communication, and I won't have grandchildren, so my future, he's the end of his line, and it's just the end of so many things for me.
Diana tells us she feels honored to be representing Gold Star families here at the White House and to remind the nation that this is still a country at war. At the White House, Tom Fitzgerald, Fox 5 Local News.
U.S. and North Korean teams are still hashing out the details on this. Negotiations are underway both in the demilitarized zone between North and South Korea and in Singapore, the site of next week's summit. In a Singapore bar, diplomacy is just a drink away. An enterprising bartender mixing cocktails called the Trump and the Kim, preparing for a summit that is looking more likely by the day. The White House even talking about the specific schedule.
I can also tell you the schedule for tentatively for that first meeting will be on June 12th at 9 a.m. Singapore time and take place June 11th, 9 p.m. East Coast time.
As for that strangely oversized letter that a North Korean delegation dropped off for President Trump last week, the White House will not disclose its contents, only saying that they were interesting. But there are some perhaps positive signs. Kim Jong-un has recently ousted 3 top generals and installed new loyalists in what may be an effort to consolidate power and usher in a new era. But in Congress, some skepticism. Democrats are concerned that the president may be desperate to make a deal. A number of them have signed off on a list of requirements. The deal must permanently eliminate North Korea's nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons, suspend missile tests, and allow robust inspections.
The president needs to be willing to take time to construct a good deal. And if he finds that one is not achievable, the president must be willing to walk away from the table.
And those drinks, by the way, cost $12.60, signifying the date, the 12th of June. And we assume at this point that the date and the drink prices will not be changing. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
I think I did the right thing. I defended the Constitution.
In a testy interview on NBC News, a defiant former President Bill Clinton refused to accept any more responsibility for his affair with Monica Lewinsky.
Looking back on what happened then, through the lens of Me Too now, do you think differently or feel more responsibility?
No, I felt terrible then. And I came to grips with it.
Did you ever apologize to him?
No, yes, and nobody believes that I got out of that for free. I left the White House $16 million in debt.
A few hours after the interview aired, Lewinsky responded saying she's grateful to the myriad people who have helped me evolve plus gain perspective in the past 20 years.
Monica up top! Straight ahead, Monica!
She then shared a link to her op-ed in Vanity Fair from 3 months ago in which she said, quote, "He was my boss. He was the most powerful man on the planet. He was 27 years my senior with enough life experience to know better. He was, at the time, at the pinnacle of his career, while I was at my first job out of college."
Do you feel like you owe her an apology?
No, I do. I do not. I've never talked to her. But I did say publicly on more than one occasion that I was sorry.
Clinton's comments are now being criticized by the left.
This is one of the key reasons why we have Trump today.
Even longtime Clinton friend and mega fundraiser, the former governor of Virginia, Terry McAuliffe, didn't think that apology was enough.
I wish he'd said today that he'd said many times, I apologize, publicly apologized, felt horrible for the actions that he did, and moved on.
The Democratic Party was already moving away from being the party of the Clintons, but the former president was still a popular surrogate heading into the midterms. Now several Democratic strategists say those candidates may no longer want his public support.
They certainly won't be inviting them on the campaign trail. Maybe they'll still be happy to have them come raise money for them behind closed doors.
And sexual harassment is a huge issue for Democratic voters heading into the midterms. According to a CNN poll last month, 80% of Democrats described it as extremely or very important to them. In Washington, Kristen Fisher, Fox News.
Advocates for same-sex rights denouncing the U.S. Supreme Court for siding with a Christian baker who refused to make a cake for a gay wedding.
If you are open to business in the public, then your responsibility is to not discriminate against anybody else, whether you agree with them or not.
But some folks say they're happy with the court's decision.
I'm just so grateful that our Constitution was supported.
The Baker supporters cheering what they see as an apparent victory for religious liberty. One bakery customer believes the core issue is actually about letting business owners do whatever they feel is best for them.
And if they want to hurt themselves financially with their decisions, that's their decision.
Could the ruling lead to new protections for marginalized groups like LGBTQ?
Protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity are civil rights issues, and they will be enforced.
Since the Supreme Court's ruling only affects this specific case, the couple at the center of the entire debate does not expect the issue to go away anytime soon.
All we've been doing is fighting for the right to be treated equally, and I don't think today's decision changed that.
Later this week, Supreme Court justices will consider whether to hear the case of a Washington state florist who declined a longtime customer's request to do flowers for his same-sex ceremony. In Los Angeles, Robert Gray, Fox News.
More trouble for Paul Manafort. The former Trump campaign chairman is now accused of witness tampering. The claim relates to his federal tax and lobbying case. He's pleaded not guilty to charges of failing to disclose lobbying work for a foreign government, in this case, Ukraine. Manafort is out on bail on house arrest awaiting trial and allegedly contacted 2 witnesses, both former business associates, trying to coach their stories about his lobbying practices. Manafort reportedly had help from someone identified only as Person A. The pair repeatedly reached out by phone as well as through an encrypted messaging program. Doing so would be a violation of Manafort's bail. Prosecutors have filed a motion asking a federal judge to revise the terms of his pre-trial release. A judge could also revoke it entirely, sending Manafort back to jail until trial. The new claims are likely to draw the ire of President Trump, who's never shied away from expressing his displeasure at the entire special counsel probe.
The president knows that the special counsel isn't needed because, once again, he hasn't done anything wrong. There was no obstruction, no collusion.
He recently attacked the FBI and Justice Department for failing to inform him Manafort was being investigated when he was hired to lead the 2016 presidential campaign. The president tweeting he would never have chosen Manafort as campaign chair. The alleged contacts occurred earlier this year, around the same time Manafort was indicted by a grand jury. In Washington, Lauren Blanchard, Fox News.
There's a shakeup in North Korea's military brass just before the summit involving President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Now in place, a new head of defense, a new chief of general staff of the Army, and a new director of the Army's powerful political bureau. All more loyal to Kim, less conservative than their predecessors, and relatively younger, although still in their 60s.
This is a really positive outcome. It would suggest that Kim is positive about making real change, serious about making real change. And he's going to get rid of the people who disagree with that, and that shows that things could move forward.
This as planning for the Singapore summit picks up steam. Meeting again along the DMZ, diplomatic teams from the U.S. and North Korea. They're reportedly following up on last week's meeting involving North Korean Vice Chairman Kim Yong-chol and President Trump, trying to nail down a summit agenda. With no hard commitments yet regarding denuclearization, there are reports that South Korean President Moon, with President Trump and Kim, will declare an end to the Korean War. So far, there's just a truce in the decades-old conflict.
What's good about that is that at some point, those two armies that are facing each other on the DMZ could pull away from each other. And that would be very significant.
This, as the North Korean leader's diplomatic dance card might be filling up. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad reportedly wants to meet, and Russian President Putin is inviting Kim Jong-un to a regional summit. China, having had 2 summits with Kim, seems pleased to let the U.S. share multilateral engagement.
We hope the 2 sides will continue to enhance dialogue, improve ties, and play positive roles to advance denuclearization and political settlement on the peninsula.
White House spokesperson Sarah Huckabee Sanders said today that good progress is being made on summit preparations, that the start time is 9 a.m. Singapore time, June 12. That's 9 p.m. Eastern time, the day before. Mark it on your calendars. In London, Greg Palcott, Fox News.
All right, guys, if you're joining us on the stream, of course, this is a bit of shocking and quite sad news today. We're breaking to you this morning that police say Kate Spade has died of an apparent suicide this morning in her New York City apartment. Now, those details are still kind of trickling in. It's a very developing story, but as you heard from us earlier, TMZ released the information right away, and then all these outlets kind of grabbed it. And law enforcement officials say that housekeeping staff did find her inside her Park Avenue apartment at the age of 55. She does have a 13-year-old daughter and a husband. Her husband, Andy Spade, is the brother of actor-comedian David Spade. Apparently there was a note left, and I believe it is to come to see kind of if there are more details surrounding what happened to her and why. But of course, it's a very tragic story coming to the fashion community, to really the community at large that were fans of her and her work, and it's an unfortunate story and quite shocking. But meanwhile, guys, a little bit of good news. There is today in D.C., we'll bring you this split shot here, Senator Bill Nelson of Florida. He'll be honoring some of the Parkland students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School. You can see in your upper right corner, that's the setup for that scene. Of course, Senator Nelson has been talking about the need for gun reform and a change in gun laws since that February 14th shooting. He's been talking about it, and he's visited the campus down there, and he's all for it and behind it. So what you see now is the setup for this ceremony. I don't really have much detail on what it's going to be, but we are told that that is occurring today on the Hill in D.C., and hopefully they just did a mic check, so hopefully we'll hear from them soon. So we'll bring up this split screenshot for you until that begins. If you guys are still with us here on Fox 5 Live, you can see this tweet from Chelsea Clinton. Celebrities and politicians and, of course, notable people are starting to tweet out and bring out their condolences for Kate Spade and her family. And you can see Chelsea Clinton here saying, "My grandmother gave me my first bag when I was in college. I still have it, holding Kate's family, friends, and loved ones in my heart." As we mentioned, we're going to kind of try to continue this story as we have new developing information and tweets and any video. Unfortunately, we have not been able to get that, but the story is still coming together, and a lot of people have a lot of questions, and of course, just a looming kind of feeling of sadness here for the fashion world and the community at large that knew Kate Spade and her family. As we mentioned, guys, next up we're supposedly having this Parkland student honoring from Senator Bill Nelson in Florida, so stay tuned for that.
Hey, good to see you.
Here. It could be depression.
Yeah. How do you get depression from the money? You got too much money, you don't know what to do with it. This gives it to me and you will know what to do with it.
The bags, make designer bags.
I don't know.
You can't be up here. This is private property. It's run by the Bid Park Avenue and also control the traffic.
Copy that, sir.
I can't have it.
I go. Good shot.
Harvey, yeah. They kept, well, you were there. Oh, that's summer?
Get out of my second.
Oh my God, I confirm.
I know. I said play again. Yeah, play again, please.
Hey, good to see you. Hey, Aaron. It could be depression.
Yeah. You get depression from the money. You got too much money, you don't know what to do with it. If she gives you to me and you don't know what to do with it.
The bags. Make designer bags.
I don't know her.
You can't be up here. This is private property. It's run by the Bid Park Avenue and also control the traffic.
Copy that, sir.
I can't have it.
I go. Good shot.
Harvey, yeah. They kept, well, you were there. Oh, that's summer?
Get out of my second.
Hi, hello, hello, hello everybody. Hello, is this working? Hello, this one? Hello, okay, hi, hi. I think it's working. Thank you, hello, okay. Hi everybody. Hi, if I could just get your attention. If I could just get your attention for one moment. I again just want to thank everybody for being here this afternoon. It's such a great honor for my family to share this special day with you. It is also my great honor to introduce Senator Nelson, who's standing next to me. He's been an extraordinary leader, senator from the state of Florida. He's worked very closely with March for Our Lives, as many of you know, has been a wonderful leader on the fight against gun violence. It's my great honor to introduce him to you now.
Has John Lewis already spoken?
Yes, you could recognize him.
John Lewis is here, and I know he already spoke to you earlier, but let's have recognition for one of the greatest civil rights icons.
And maybe for my mother, Ethel Kennedy.
Is she here? And I want to recognize also Mrs. Ethel Kennedy, who is here. Let's give her a recognition as well. I actually asked them, should I really make this remarks because you all were having such a good time visiting. So let me truncate the remarks so you can return to those conversations and just say that this award given in the memory of Senator Robert Kennedy, whose life was cut too short almost exactly 50 years ago to the day, but his legacy lives on, and it's in that spirit, that legacy, that these awards have been given to March for Our Lives, Color of Change, United We Dream, and the International Indigenous Youth Council. I've had the privilege of working with the students in Florida, and of course we know what incredible people they are and the difference that they're making. You just think, after all of the tragedies that we've seen, and go back to the elementary kids in Sandy Hook, and then the Pulse nightclub, and Texas, and Las Vegas, it was only after the high school in Parkland that students had the courage and so informed and articulate to speak out that they are making a difference. these students were the first to stand up and really challenge the NRA. And it had gotten, and it had gotten to the point that it was so imbalanced. For example, when Senator Feinstein filed a bill that said that if you were on the terrorist watch list, you could not buy a gun, and that was defeated. Something as common sense as that. You can't fly on an airplane, you're on the terrorist watch list, you're suspected of being a terrorist, but the NRA would not let the votes come through in order to pass that in the Senate. That's how out of balance this whole thing had gotten, and along come these students, and they are incredible. And you all are recognizing them along with the other groups that I mentioned. So I just wanted to come and give my voice of applause and recognition and appreciation for what our students in Florida are doing and is having a profound effect on the politics of this country. Thank you. God bless you.
What's going on with you? What are you doing? Hang out with your dog? It's amazing how much millennials. And you've been naming my daughter. No, but I was out. How many games are we in now? Oh, sorry. How are you? Yes, I know. That's what I got you off. No worries. I like white. That's a good real. Never is on that. Gotcha. How's it? Do I need to step outside? Or something? Okay, gotcha. I hear you. Yes, that's Jello bread. You can easily beat the Jello too. You ought to see the videos. Wow. That channel. Yeah, 65. Jello. The pageant. You guys should pay for this?
You keep laughing. One day your turn is gonna come.
What's next on this book?
It's all about you for today, so I'm gonna specifically focus on you. Just extra.
What's that? Focusing on that.
Yeah, got it.
No, that's okay. Yeah.
I trust her.
It's the second one. No. It does stuff to you. Plays more havoc than just on.
It's all manual, but you have the three control ones.
Keep that.
It's all manual. Well, that's 40K. So.
Money's been a lot of the camera. But he's consistent, so I was corrected.
just a day before the Philadelphia Eagles team members were supposed to come to the White House, the White House released this statement saying that they were disinvited, essentially. This is an unprecedented decision, a time-honored tradition here for the Super Bowl champs to come here to the White House. And what doesn't add up here, Brooke, is that the White House was saying that this has to do with the national anthem. But as you pointed out, no Philadelphia Eagles teammates actually took a knee during the regular season or spent time in the locker room during the national anthem during the regular season. So the idea that this has to do with the national anthem simply doesn't add up. Now, the White House released a follow-up statement today saying that the conversations going on since February with the team and late May, team members said that there would be 81 representatives of the Philadelphia Eagles coming to the White House, and then they just found out recently that there would be less than 10 members. And so it is clear that this is an attempt to avoid an embarrassing picture because less than 10 members of the Philadelphia Eagles are attending the celebration at the White House. The president made this decision to cancel it. Also reporting a Philadelphia Eagles team member told my colleague Jay Tapper that the national anthem concern never came up in these conversations that have been going since February. So there will be a celebration today just without the team members. There will be bands here at the Philadelphia Eagles and the Green Band will be playing the national anthem. The president said, and what is clear here is that this is an attempt by the president to play with his base. He knows that talking about the national anthem standing for it plays well with his base, and so it appears to be an attempt to deflect from the idea that less than 10 members were coming to the White House and make this more about pageant.
My plan so his fiance was and he planned a proposal weekend for her in Charlottesville. He did propose that weekend. They were a little bit, they were at some kind of like hotel outside of town, but they were planning to go into town
Or maybe never.
No, and they actually, no, they put it on the wedding website, which I really wanted. Yeah, there we go.
Then we had guys like,
was the director yelling? For Google Maps, I did recording on YouTube. Let's see
Scandal.
That was a biblical that has gray and black. So just take the gray and plug it to channel one. Make sure it's pushed to green.
We're proud of you.
No, that's a big
Oh,
The unemployment rate was the lowest literally in 48 years, half a century, to see the kind of numbers that we're seeing today. Wage growth, fastest in 10 years, and the time that someone is unemployed is the shortest since 2009. And if you look at what's happened since tax reform passed, we've created 1 million new jobs since the passage of tax reform and 3.6 million new jobs since this president took office. Our pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-worker agenda is working for the American people. And it doesn't happen by accident or happen by chance. It's because we have made a diligent effort to put policies in place that will help our economy grow and provide incentives for our businesses to expand. And if you look at regulatory relief from some of the Obama-era regulations, tax reform, you can go right down the list. Some of the reforms that we passed just recently, the President signed the Dodd-Frank reforms into law, which will take a lot of pressure off our small businesses and lenders out there to make more credit available in our economy. And we're going to keep right on going, whether it's judges or energy policy, right down the list, because we think that staying focused on a pro-growth, pro-jobs agenda for the American people will continue to yield positive results and benefits for them.
And coming back from a week in Wyoming, you can see the positive results. People feel confident, they are optimistic about the economy and specifically about their own lives. So when we have the unemployment rate at this 50-year low and consumer confidence at an 18-year high for the average family, what that means is you wake up in the morning, for the person waking up in the morning, they have the hope of and the feeling that there's going to be a job, an opportunity. We've seen their wages have gone up, so people have more money in their pockets for two reasons. One is the tax cuts, and then the other is actually the wages that have gone up. So we're going to continue to work on this. We have right now a strong, healthy, and growing economy, and you do it by cutting taxes, getting rid of regulations and mandates that make it harder for people to have work. Now people are having the opportunities, the freedom that comes from the tax cuts and the regulatory relief, and we're going to continue to focus on families and their prosperity and their paychecks.
Well, like a lot of my colleagues, I had media events all over the state last week talking about the economy, specifically talking about the tax bill. Families coming in and talking about what a difference $100 or $150 a month made to them. Employers talking about the difficulty of finding people, but in at least 3 occasions, people talking to me about people they had fired in the past, and they reached out to them and said, if you want a second chance, you've got the skills we need. If you want to come back to work, and we can take that second chance opportunity. The same with people who have skills who've served time in jail or served time in prison, but in the current unemployed pool have skills that employers are willing to take chances that they weren't taking before. The economy is growing, the numbers are real, and families are beginning to feel that.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, come on, Corey.
I was just going to say that. I was just going to say that county fairgoers around the country are excited about the announcement by Senator McConnell today, because the parade's just got a heck of a lot shorter since we'll be in session in August. But I wanted to just highlight the fact that the work we've been doing on tax reform, regulatory reform. 2 reports just came out identifying Colorado's economy as one of the strongest states' economies in the nation. It's because of in part the work that we've continued to do to get government out of the way, to get Washington out of the way, and let Colorado work, to let America work. A week from today, President Trump will be at a historic summit in Singapore. The Singapore summit will have the eyes of the world on it, as we have the possibility of peace on the peninsula. I hope this opportunity to build up to this summit is a bipartisan process, that we don't have partisan bickering trying to pick holes in the opportunity to denuclearize North Korea. I attended the Singapore Shangri-La dialogue this past week, where we heard from over 40 defense ministers throughout the region, all who are keenly interested in what's going to happen a week from today in Singapore. There, Secretary Mattis laid out his plan for U.S. leadership and the fact that we indeed will be pursuing a long-term denuclearized North Korea.
Yeah.
Last year, when you announced you were shortening the recess, you made that announcement in mid-July, and we were here less than a handful of days. You're saying it's going to be here for 4 out of the 5 weeks in August, though. Make this announcement in early June. Isn't this really a shot across the Democrats' bow to say, look, relent on some of these running clock nominees and try to work out an agreement? You have 2 months to try to work some of this out.
Well, I'm all for cooperation, but if you look at the amount of work that we have to do, it's inconceivable to me that we can't use these weeks, even with cooperation. We've got a lot of appropriation bills to pass. We've got this backlog of nominations. Certainly we would anticipate and hope to have less obstruction on those, but I've been hoping for that for quite some time, and it hadn't occurred yet. Just to sum it up, I think we have enough work to do for the American people that we should be here during these weeks. I hope we'll get greater cooperation, but everybody should anticipate that we will be here as I announced today.
What if the House doesn't send you appropriations bills?
Well, I'm not going to answer every hypothetical. Yeah, they're interested in sending us bills, hopefully in minibuses, multiple bills at a time. That would certainly help us facilitate the passage.
Senator,
yeah.
A growing number of your Senate public colleagues are expressing support for this tuning proposal. See if Congress, the old authority, had ordered tariffs, especially for use with the national security justification. Would you support adding that to the NDAA, or would you be open-minded to letting?
Yeah, here's what I'm in favor of is getting bills passed that we have to do for the country. NDAA is certainly one of them, but it is open for amendment, and we'll see what happens as it moves across the floor. We've got to do the farm bill. We've got all these appropriation bills to do, not to mention all these nominations. So items as contentious as that's likely to be, we'll see, but I'm not going to call it up freestanding. You're suggesting it might be offered as an amendment. NDAA is going to be open. We'll see what amendments are offered. I don't have any comment on that issue.
This morning the president said that the Attorney General should not have accused himself in the Russia investigation. Otherwise, he chose another Attorney General.
Yeah.
The question is, can a new Attorney General confirm in this Senate, in this environment?
Yeah, look, I know what you all are interested in discussing. Let me just tell you that from my perspective, I don't think the president needs any advice on pardoning himself. He obviously knows that would not be something that he would or should do. They were having an academic discussion about whether it's possible. I don't know the answers to that. With regard to Attorney General Sessions, as a former colleague of ours, I think he is very popular with our members, and I hope he'll remain in the job.
Hey all, it's Sam here in the newsroom, taking over for Molly for a little while. Just checked in with some of the GOP leaders in the Senate. They were addressing the media, answering some questions there. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell just announced that they're not going to be having a recess in August like normally planned. He's citing issues with the Democrats there to make policy, but we're going to go check in with Sarah Sanders. She's going to...
has fallen to 3.8%, matching the lowest level in nearly 50 years. The Bureau of Labor Statistics reported today that job openings hit a record high of 6.7 million in April, meaning job openings outnumber those that are unemployed. American workers looking for new opportunities are finding them because of this president's policies of lower taxes, deregulation, and fair and reciprocal trade. America's economic potential has been unleashed. I've invited the chairman of the President's Council of Economic Advisors, Kevin Hassett, to join us today and offer more details about the growing economy and take your questions on this topic. After that, I'll be happy to come up and take questions on news of the day. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Sarah. And, you know, I watch these things a lot, and I was noticing that not everybody's always in the best mood. And so I told Sarah, what you guys need are some charts, right? And so we've got some charts for you today. And yeah, I know. Yeah, I could see. There are a lot of nodding people. Okay, so I think that Sarah said it best, that we're in, as the president has tweeted, one of the best economies I've seen in my career, and that there are a number of facts that have developed over the last few months that are, I think, confirming some of the stuff we talked about last fall when we talked about, gosh, it was maybe November, the tax bill and the economic impact that the tax bill might have on the economy. In addition, the president has pursued a trade agenda and deregulation, and we're beginning to see the effects of all of this in the data. And the first slide, if we can get it, is one of my favorite ways to just look at a summary of how the economy is doing is to look at the GDP growth over the previous year. And you might recall when President Trump ran for office and when he came in and when I first started at CEA almost a year ago, that we were looking ahead to 3% growth, and everybody said, no, 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 we've got a new normal, those blue lines which you see during the Obama years, where we've got growth in the ones, maybe up to 2 if we're lucky, but we could never get 3% growth again. Well, in the latest data that we have, we've got growth year over year that's just a smidgen less than 3%. And the Atlanta Fed GDP Now number right now is that second quarter GDP will be high enough to make the year over year growth about 3.1 or 3.2. And so if you look at this chart, you can see that there's been a clear trend break and that we've gone from a new normal of low growth to just normal, which is the 3% growth that Americans used to expect. I could have the next slide, please. In this chart, I want to show something that we again talked about in the fall, which is that one of the reasons why we had such low growth in the previous administration is it was so anti-business, and it was basically discouraging capital formation in the U.S. with inappropriate tax policy and high regulation. And you can see that in the data if you look at, for example, the blue dot from Q1 2015 to Q4 2015, business capital spending barely increased at all. And even in pre-election 2016, it stayed at about the same level. But subsequently, after the election, already we started to see a big increase in business sentiment and capital spending started to go up. And now that we've passed the tax bill, then you can see capital spending skyrocketing just as we said it would last fall. And that higher capital spending is exactly one of the key factors driving growth at this time. I can remember way back in the fall saying that if we pass the tax bill, we'd expect to see capital spending this year higher by about 10%. If you look at the last bar in the first quarter of GDP this year, capital spending was up 9.2%. Next slide, please. There are a number of other things that we could look at, and believe me, we could go on all day, but I promised Sarah I'd stop at about 10 minutes. This is one of the ones that I find most striking because it has such a big impact on our outlook for small business. So right now, small businesses are as optimistic as we've ever seen since we've begun surveying them. And I think it's also interesting to see, like you can say, well, and sometimes people in the Obama administration will say, well, we just set this economy up for the president. But you can see a clear break in this chart at the election. And so President Trump promised that he would cut taxes, that he reduced taxes on small business, and that he would reduce the heavy regulatory costs that were imposed on them by the previous administration. And you can see even before he began to act, that sentiment turned around. I have the next slide, please. And that's helped lead to something that is really one of the more remarkable labor markets that we've ever seen. The job market right now is about as strong as I've ever seen. And there are a lot of different ways to put it in perspective, but for me, the easiest fact is just that it's only 7 times back to 1970 that we've had an unemployment rate below 4%, and 2 of those months were the last 2 months. And we expect that will continue. As remarkable as that chart is, I think the next one is one of the ones that I think moves me even more. The next chart shows the gap between the unemployment rate of white workers and black workers. And you can see that the gap between the unemployment rate for black workers and white workers has gone to an all-time low. And it's maybe about a third what it was on average during the Obama administration. And of course, we want that gap to get all the way down to zero, but we've made a tremendous amount of progress because President Trump's are working to heat up the economy. The next chart for a person who loves economic data is really my favorite because you rarely ever see anything that is the best since the Second World War in economic data. And this chart shows that the initial claims for unemployment insurance, which is those people who have the really bad news that they lost their job and then show up at the unemployment office to collect their unemployment insurance, that as a share of the workforce, they're the lowest they've been since the Second World War. And so, really one of the worst, most disruptive things that can happen to a person's life is to lose their job. Right now, there's never been a better economy for this since the Second World War. I've got one more chart, and then we'll open up for questions. And the last chart is something that the president tweeted about, and this is just a chart of what's happened to Americans' wealth since the president was elected. This is how much money they've got in their checking accounts, their saving accounts, what the value of their house is, and of course the value of equity markets. And you can see that since the president was elected, that Americans' wealth has increased by $7 trillion, and I would guess that when we see the data over the next coming quarters that we're going to cross the 100 trillion mark for Americans' wealth. And so it's very clear that the president's economic policies are working, but I think that the most important thing is that they're working for America's workers, that America's workers are being laid off at the lowest pace that we've ever seen, and wage growth, which we didn't include in the chart, is also taking off as well. With that, I'll open up for a few questions. I promised Sarah that I would keep it at 3 or 4 or something like that, and I'll start with Robertson and then I'll work back.
Great. Kevin, good afternoon. Thanks for being with us today. The unemployment rate, 3.8% last month, but the labor participation rate still lags 4 points behind where it was the last time unemployment was below 4% down in this range. What can this White House do to increase the labor participation rate?
Right. Well, this White House has, going all the way back to the campaign when the president was speaking to the forgotten people, the people who had exited the labor force because they were so discouraged that they just sort of given up. And we said that we don't believe the story that was being pushed by the previous administration, that there's no hope for you. We think that you should get back into the labor force. As of, I did this calculation as of the last jobs report. I haven't updated it for this jobs report, but as of the last jobs report, 900,000 people, 900,000 Americans who are out of the labor force have gotten a job since President Trump took office. So I'll go back to you, ma'am. And
yes, thank you. 2 questions. Does this administration put into account that the Obama administration they were dealing with a recession, they were coming out of a recession? Do you take that into account when you talk about the numbers, comparing apples to oranges when you're dealing with the economic portion? And then going into black unemployment, the numbers have come down, but historically the numbers have always been 1.5 to 2 times or even greater than that of white America. Will this administration, since you love to tout those numbers, effectively target in to bring that gap to?
Thank you for that question. So first, the Great Recession, that was the targeting point is something we've been working on. But first, the Great Recession absolutely slowed growth in the early years of the Obama administration. But normally what we should have seen in the economic recovery is that at the end of the administration, that the capital spending and everything else would be getting back to normal. And that wasn't happening. And that was clearly in the data. As for the targeting, I think that one of the things that we've spoken in this room about before that the president talks a lot about is it's increasing jobs in goods-producing industries. That's manufacturing and construction. Those goods-producing industries are creating jobs right now at a pace that's just a little bit under 50,000 a month, and that pace is about double what it was under the previous administration. It's precisely the thing that the president's been targeting, and if you look at the racial disparities across different professions, that it's the good-producing industries that are in part responsible for the big reduction in the black unemployment rate. I will let you have one follow-up. I'm sorry, because I think, yes.
I'm sorry. Thank you for that. So, but when it comes to construction, it's known more so as a boost for Hispanic workers. What specifically are you going to do to target for African Americans, since you are talking about, I mean, you guys...
The president's policies are clearly working. The gap is the lowest in history, and his policy is to target goods-producing industries, and he's been very successful at that. Can I move back here, yellow tie? Yes, thank you.
Let's turn to trade for a second. The United States has its stance right now on possible tariffs. China has its stance on possible tariffs. Have you guys at all modeled if there is a trade war between the U.S. and China, how that would impact the U.S. economy. And as well, you've had Republicans over the last couple months who have said the one thing that can stall tax reform, the impacts on the economy as they see it, is the president's trade policy. Are they onto something there?
Look, the economic report of the president that we put out a few months ago documented something the president has talked about, I think, very emotionally at times, going all the way back to the campaign, which is that our trade deals are very asymmetric, that our markets are really open to the imports from other countries, but a lot of other countries have asymmetric treatment of us. And so, for example, in Europe, they have a 10% tariff on cars, and we have a 2.5% tariff. The president's objective is to get fully reciprocal trade deals. And if you model a future where everybody else reduces their trade barriers to ours, then that's massively good for the global economy and massively good for the U.S. economy. Now, the president wrote the book, The Art of the Deal. We're engaged in discussions and negotiations, and we're hopeful that we reach that positive long-run equilibrium. Let me move on to another one. Right here. Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin. I wanted to ask you about the benefits of the tax cut legislation that the president signed into law in December. A Morgan Stanley survey found that 43% of the tax cut savings are going to stock buybacks and dividends. 13% are going to employee raises and bonuses, employee benefits, something like that. Are you disappointed that you're seeing that impact, that effect from the tax cut that so much more seems to be going to Wall Street than to Main Street?
No, not at all. In fact, wage growth right now is the highest. If you look at over the last quarter, the employment cost index is the highest it's been, going all the way back at least to 2006. But that's where they changed the way they do data. That we've got more than 6 million people that have been announced to have a pay raise because of the tax bill. The average pay raise for them is a little north of $1,200. And the president said again and again, and CEA said again and again, that there'd be a $4,000 increase in pay for people if we passed the tax bill. And people said that that number was completely implausible, but let's look at the numbers now. Walmart, for example, has increased the minimum wage for their workers, the lowest paid workers at Walmart, by $2 an hour. If you run that forward, that's just a little bit less than $4,000 this year. And so if the lowest paid people at Walmart are getting the $4,000 the president has promised, then of course we're not disappointed in the wage data. Could I have a question over here?
If it's going to Wall Street, then to Main Street.
Just to follow up on the question that was asked earlier, tariffs. Do you predict, and it was the trade question I guess that Blake was asking, following up on, there's always a prediction that increased tariffs will depress the economy. What the president is engaged in, do you foresee any problems with the tariffs that he's implemented, and what would be your reaction to it?
I think that the president is pushing our trading partners hard to make their deals fair for America's workers, and that's his objective, and there are ongoing discussions right now. And you know, I know a lot of other presidents. I was over here at one point as an outsider coming to talk to President Obama's team about this. A lot of other presidents have wanted to make better deals and failed, and this president is not going to fail at that. He's going to make better deals.
Would that depress the economy, higher tariffs? Do you admit that that could cause problems with the economy?
We expect that this is going to work out well, and that we're going to get fair trade deals. Could I have back there, the fellow? Yeah, thanks.
Just following up on that a little bit. What you said here and what the president said also is that talking about tariffs would be more of a negotiating tactic as much as anything. How far though can this be as a negotiating tactic? With you one that at some point had to pull the trigger if other countries don't do away with the trade barriers?
No, I reject the view that it's a negotiating tactic purely. For example, the steel tariffs were put in place as a national security concern. The president is the commander-in-chief. He's supposed to make those judgments. In a time of war, we need to be able to produce steel. I think that there are a lot of things going on in the 301 space, to use the inside baseball term. We're trying to get China to stop stealing more than $100 billion worth of our intellectual property every year and to open their markets to our products. And so there are a lot of things going on right now. I think last question, sir. Okay. Yeah.
Indication of where we are in terms of the NAFTA negotiations right now. There's this idea out there that the United States might want to break up the NAFTA negotiations and do a direct deal with Canada, a direct deal with Mexico. Is that the right approach, and what do you think is coming next?
I think that the president's approach is to negotiate with Mexico and to negotiate with Canada and to make better deals. And I think that, you know, you'll have to talk to Ambassador Lighthizer to get an update on the current state of negotiations. So thank you very much. Thank you all for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Lastly, one additional update. The President and the administration applaud Senator Majority Leader McConnell and his decision to cancel the majority of the August recess and remain in session. There has been historic obstruction by Senate Democrats, and there is a long to-do list, including important nominations and appropriations bills that we hope they can get taken care of. And with that, I will take your questions. Jonathan.
Sarah, on the President's decision to disinvite the Eagles, he's suggesting this is about the national anthem. Is the President aware that not a single player on the Eagles through the entire season knelt for the national anthem?
The President's position on not just the anthem has been clear, but let's not forget this isn't there were 80 members of the Eagles organization that RSVP'd and committed to attend this event as recently as Friday, as well as over 1,000 fans of the Eagles organization. And the Eagles are the ones that tried to change their commitment at the 11th hour. And the President, frankly, thinks that the fans deserve better than that. And therefore, we changed the ceremony to be a focus on celebrating our great country.
Why is he acting like this is about the national anthem? And is he concerned that we heard from Steph Curry and from LeBron James the suggestion that whoever wins the NBA championship, they're unlikely to be here? Is this about something more than the national anthem? Something other than the national anthem?
Look, if this wasn't a political stunt by the Eagles franchise, then they wouldn't have planned to attend the event and then backed out at the last minute. And if it wasn't a political stunt, then they wouldn't have attempted to reschedule the visit when they knew that the President was going to be overseas. And if this wasn't a political stunt, they wouldn't have waited until Monday, well after 1,000 of their fans had traveled and taken time out of their schedules to offer only a tiny handful of representatives to attend the event. Pamela?
To be clear on that point, this isn't about the national anthem, it's about so few players coming in the end, correct?
Certainly the President has been very clear what his position is in regards to the national anthem. We've never wavered on that. The President thinks that people should stand for the national anthem, particularly when it comes to the NFL. It's not about a particular team. It's about having pride in our country and about being respectful to the men and women who have fought and died to preserve our country. In terms of this, the Eagles are the ones that changed their commitment at the last minute. The President felt it was appropriate to change the event to be a ceremony to celebrate our country.
Just to follow up, Sarah, really important on yesterday on the statement that you made, you referred us to the outside counsel on the Don Jr. statement that the President was involved in. The outside counsel did weigh in, saying that yes, the President did dictate the statement. Rudy Giuliani was on CNN saying it was a mistake to say that the President didn't dictate it. So do you want to correct the record on your statement from August when you said he certainly didn't dictate?
Once again, I'm not going to go into detail and go into a back and forth. And I know that you guys would love to engage on matters of conversations between the special counsel and the outside counsel, but we've purposefully walled off, and I'm not going to comment on the outside counsel.
Outside counsel in August as well, but you still talked about it. So why can't you correct the record now?
Again, I'm not going to answer questions that deal specifically with conversations between the outside counsel and the special counsel.
Not to answer the question?
Again, I am not going to get into a back and forth with you on that, and I'd refer you to the outside counsel. Catherine.
Sarah, President Trump won Pennsylvania by a narrow margin. The GOP is looking to pick up a Senate seat there. Does he risk alienating key voters in that state by both by disinviting Eagles, but also by the statement that the team abandoned the fans?
Certainly, we would hope that all of the people of Pennsylvania would share the President's commitment to the national anthem and the pride that we have in our country, and certainly not meant to be a slight to anyone, but frankly, a reaffirmation of what a great country that we live in, and to stand for the national anthem is something the President has been very clear on. Sarah?
Thank you, Sarah. On Thursday, Prime Minister Abe will be here in the Parkland. What will be on his agenda going into the meeting in terms of will they discuss trade issues? And the President said the other day that Japan, China, and South Korea can provide economic assistance to North Korea. And does the President plan to raise this issue with Prime Minister Abe?
I'm not going to get ahead of the President's meeting with the Prime Minister, but we certainly anticipate the summit with North Korea that will be next week to come up, as well as trade issues and other matters, and we'll be happy to provide a readout, and the President will speak to that tomorrow. Josh? Sorry, I'm going to keep going. Josh, go ahead.
The Administrator Scott Pruitt asking we reported today that
help his wife get a Chick-fil-A franchise. Does the president think that's ethical behavior?
I haven't spoken with the president about that since that report came out. Matthew?
One follow-up for you, Sarah. Back to her question. I'm asking really about the special counsel, the outside counsel. The only question is, do you think your statement in August was accurate? Your statement, not this. Was your statement accurate or inaccurate?
Again, I know you want to get me into a back and forth with you on this conversation.
Back and forth. You said something. We just want to know if it was accurate or not.
Look, I know your goal is to engage me in a conversation about matters dealing with the outside counsel, and I'm not going to do that today.
Not about the outside counsel. You said something from the podium. Was it accurate or not? That's all we want to know.
Again, I work day in, day out, and I believe, frankly, with the majority of you here in the room, I think you all know I'm an honest person who works extremely hard to provide you with accurate information at all times. I'm going to continue to do that, but I'm not going to engage on matters that deal with the outside counsel. Justin?
I wanted to ask about OMB, but just to follow on this quickly, and I think you were asked the question earlier, is the reason that you're unwilling to engage on this because either you have already or you anticipate yourself having to talk to the special counsel about this statement?
It's because the appropriate venue for these questions to be addressed would be through the outside counsel, and that's why I would refer you to them to answer them.
So on OMB, they issued a revised rescission request today, and it withdrew the proposed cuts on Hurricane Sandy recovery funds, Nevola funding. I'm wondering if we should see those retreats as the administration inaccurately concluding at first that those were money that was no longer needed, and if that's happened just in the last couple of months, why that wouldn't be true for other areas of the budget that the administration has targeted going forward?
Not necessarily, but I would refer you to OMB to get into the details of that, and we'll be happy to provide additional information also over the next few days on specifics with rescissions. John?
Sir, the president again took a stick to his favorite piñata, Jeff Sessions, today. What is the president's goal here? Is it just simply to remind the Attorney General that he's really PO'd at him and he's not going to let him forget it? Is he trying to get him to quit? Is he trying to emasculate him, holding him up? I mean, what is the president trying to do?
Look, the president's made his position on this extremely clear, and I don't have anything to add beyond that. Sager, just because you laughed the hardest at John's joke, I feel like you earned the right for the next question.
Sarah, the president tweeted today that he was concerned that the FBI was weakening or slow-walking the DOJ and IG investigation into the Hillary Clinton email investigation handled by FBI Director James Comey. What is he basing that concern on? Is it based on conversations that he's had with FBI personnel currently, or is it simply an observation based on the past?
Look, I think the president would like to see this process move faster. They've been obsessed with a number of other issues in which they've spent a great deal of time on. I think he'd like to see some of that spread out and some time spent on that.
Does he think it's appropriate to encourage the Inspector General to release it based on his timeline rather than their own?
The president wants full transparency in this process, but he also wants it to be expedited and completed quickly on all fronts. Andrew?
Thanks, Sarah. I wanted to follow up on Josh's question and Sarah's question, but in a larger sense. The president, whether it's on his Twitter account or otherwise, keeps saying things that are not borne out by the facts, whether it is the Eagles thing is about the national anthem, or we got $6 billion for opioids and getting rid of that scourge that's taken over our country, and the numbers are way down. We have thousands of immigration judges. And so the president keeps saying things that aren't true. And this thing with dictating the statement.
What's the question? Sorry, Andrew. We could get there.
Why, if things that you keep saying from the podium turn out to not be true, and things the president keeps saying in a number of venues keep turning out not to be true, why should we be able to trust that the information we're getting from this administration is accurate? And more importantly, why should Americans be able to trust that what they hear from this White House is always the truth?
Once again, I don't know how many times I have to address this, but I work every single day to give you accurate and up-to-date information, and I'm going to continue to do that. Frankly, I think my credibility is probably higher than the media's, and I think that in large part that's because you guys spend more of your time focused on attacking the president instead of reporting the news. I think that if you spent a little bit more time reporting the news instead of trying to tear me down, you might actually see that we're working hard trying to provide you good information and trying to provide that same good information to the American people. John? Sorry, Andrew, I gave you quite a bit of time. John, go ahead.
Thanks a lot, sir. I just wanted to get your reaction, the administration's reaction to a statement that was put out by a player on the Eagles, Malcolm Jenkins. He's a strong safety on the Philadelphia Eagles, very well respected on the team and throughout the league. He put out a statement today in which he said that the decision that was made by the president to cancel this event celebrating the Super Bowl victory by the Eagles paints the picture that these players are anti-America, anti-flag, and anti-military. What is your response to what Malcolm Jenkins put out in a statement today?
I've addressed this a few times. Again, the Eagles were the ones that committed to an event on Friday. They submitted over 80 members of the Eagles franchise for the event, along with over 1,000 fans to participate. And it was the Eagles organization that tried to change their commitment at the 11th hour. If this, once again, if this wasn't a political stunt, then they wouldn't have planned to attend the event and then backed out. If it wasn't a political stunt, they wouldn't have attempted to reschedule an event for when they knew that the president would be out of the country, and they wouldn't have waited until the very last minute to make these changes if this wasn't about some type of political statement that they were trying to make towards this president. Cecilia?
Are you saying that the president bears zero responsibility in this cancellation? This is a president who called NFL players SOBs, who implied that some players who don't stand for the national anthem do not belong in this country. Does he bear zero responsibility for players like the Warriors and the Cavs not wanting to come and the Eagles bailing on this?
The president his position hasn't changed on this throughout the process, and the president's position was very clearly stated in a number of forums and venues, and the Eagles made the commitment to come and to be part of that event well after the president had established his feelings in regards to the national anthem. And once again, they made that change at the last minute, not the president. He's the one that has been completely consistent in his viewpoint when it comes to this. Steve?
Sarah, the president last year broke with recent tradition and did not host an iftar dinner. Is the president hosting such a dinner this year, and can you tell us how the invitees were selected?
He is hosting a dinner tomorrow evening. There will be a roughly, I believe, about 30 to 40 different attendees. I'd be happy to provide you with more specifics, but I believe that it takes place around 8:45 tomorrow evening. Blake?
Sarah, thank you. Let me ask you about two possible trade deals. The one involving the Chinese, in which it would be $70 billion of buying American products. The United States would back off its threat of tariffs. Is that something that President Trump would support?
We're in the negotiation process, and as Kevin said, and as the president stated many times before, our focus is on making sure we get good deals. I'm not here to make an announcement on what those look like, but he's going to continue pushing forward to make sure that he gets the best deal for American workers. John?
Real quick on NAFTA, Larry Kudlow said today, Eamon referenced it, that maybe the president wants to deal with Canada solely, with Mexico solely, and that the idea of negotiating NAFTA might be gone at this point. Is the possibility of getting to a NAFTA deal done as this administration sees it?
It's not done, but again, the president is open to having individual deals, but he's looking at the best way to make sure he gets the best deal possible for American workers, and whether or not that's through NAFTA or other means, those options are on the table. John?
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Back to the issue of presidential pardons. There's been considerable furor in Illinois among Republicans, particularly supporters of the president and allies in Congress, such as Congressman Randy Hultgren, about him even suggesting commuting the sentence of former Governor Rod Blagojevich. Several party activists and colleagues of Congressman Hultgren are becoming increasingly outspoken. Is he going to go ahead with the commutation, or is he backing down? And is he aware of the criticism from supporters of his?
The president hasn't made a final decision on that, but as you know, the president doesn't base his decisions off of the criticism of others, but on what he thinks is the right decision to make, and that's what he'll base it on. Dave?
Sarah, the president is also meeting with lawmakers here this afternoon. What's on the agenda?
A number of items will be discussed at that event, and we'll be sure to provide info afterwards. Hunter?
Thank you, Sarah. Does the president still think his response to the hurricane in Puerto Rico deserves a 10 out of 10 score, now that estimates say almost 5,000 people died there?
The federal response, once again, was at a historic proportion. We're continuing to work with the people of Puerto Rico and do the best we can to provide federal assistance, particularly working with the governor there in Puerto Rico, and we'll continue to do so.
Peter, any concern about the massive volume of the death toll there?
The administration came out in support of the bakers' freedom of expression in yesterday's Supreme Court case. I guess I'm asking, why are athletes' rights to express themselves freely any different than the bakers?
When it comes to the bakers, we're pleased with the Supreme Court's decision. The First Amendment prohibits government discriminating against the basis of religious beliefs, and the Supreme Court rightly concluded that the Colorado Civil Rights Commission failed to show tolerance and respect for his religious beliefs. In this case and others, the Department of Justice will continue to vigorously defend the free speech and religious freedom First Amendment rights.
So I guess my question is simple. So if the White House supports the bakers' right of free speech, why doesn't the White House support the players' right to free speech?
The president doesn't think that this is an issue simply of free speech. He thinks it's about respecting the men and women of our military. It's about respecting our national anthem, and it's about standing out of pride for that. Sorry, I'm going to take one last question.
Will he commit to a roundtable?
Police-involved shootings.
Will the president then, if it is about free speech and he supports these ideas, will the president commit to a roundtable with America's athletes on topics of social injustice?
Certainly be happy to ask him. Steven?
Has he not considered, just for clarity, is it not something that has had any discussion to this point, given all the division in this country over this topic of social injustice?
Certainly, we look at ways every single day to unify our country. The president has worked actively and tirelessly to be the president of all Americans. I think you can see that reflected in the policies that he's put forth. I think one of the biggest things that you've seen come out of this administration, frankly, that is far and vastly different than previous administrations, is providing economic opportunity for all Americans. And one of the greatest equalizers that we can have is to provide a level playing field. And the president has worked increasingly hard to make sure that that happens. Kevin spoke about that earlier, and he's going to continue to do that. We'll take one last question, Stephen.
About police-involved shootings. Is the president aware that this is about police-involved shootings and not about disrespecting the flag? Is the president aware of that, Sarah, please? I understand you're going to Stephen, but I'm asking, there's an underlying issue, and it just keeps going about disrespect of the flag and soldiers. There are black and brown soldiers that fight in the military as well, who feel that taking a knee, bringing attention to police-involved shootings is something that this White House should deal with. Is the president aware that taking the knee is about police-involved shootings?
The president has made his position crystal clear, and that it's about, I let you rudely interrupt me and your colleague. I'm going to ask that you allow me to finish my answer. I would be happy to answer it if you would stop talking long enough to let me do that. The president has made his position crystal clear on this topic. He feels strongly that standing for our national anthem is something that we should do, something that matters to what makes our country special and unique and what sets us apart. He's not going to waver on that, and he's not going to apologize for it. And frankly, more than 70% of Americans agree with him on that matter. If you go back to what the original intent was, this has been made a political argument of which the president is not going to back down from, and he's been clear on it. Stephen, last question. April, I've addressed your question. I'm not going to continue to engage with you. Stephen.
The NFL is now telling people they have to stand. Will the president deal with the issue of police-involved shootings?
I'm going to deal with the issue of addressing your colleague's question.
It's a real question. Can you take it to the president and come back to us with it?
Stephen, go ahead.
Always happy to yield to a colleague, but let me ask you about Scott Pruitt, because the two Republicans who represent Iowa in the Senate have had it with the EPA administrator. Chuck Grassley said that Pruitt has betrayed the president. Joni Ernst says that Pruitt is as swampy as you can get. Josh and his colleagues report in the Washington Post today. new elements of just how swampy that is. So let me ask you, how is it, in the face of all that we've learned, how is it that President Trump continues to have confidence in the EPA administrator, assuming that he still does?
Once again, I haven't had a chance to speak with the president directly about the Washington Post's new report. We continue to have concerns and look into those, and we'll address them. Thanks, guys.
What color is the sky in the president's world?
Hey everybody, it's Sam in the newsroom. Just following up with that was Sarah Sanders giving the latest updates from the White House. She covered a lot of different things. There was an update briefing from Kevin Hassett, who is an economic strategist, talking about country's economic growth and jobs, and he had some charts, but the shot that we had, I wasn't able to see the charts, so I guess that means that you did not either. So we have to check on what those charts were, but it was about growth in the economy and the unemployment rate. The Trump administration is saying that the economy has gotten stronger in the past year, and they're comparing that to the Obama administration. There were a couple of questions, though, that since the Obama administration was coming out of a recession, there was kind of a lag there to get to where we were at the end of President Obama's term. I'm not sure what those numbers were because I couldn't see the charts, but thanks for keeping with us there. There was also a lot of debate because of the president's newest announcement that there was supposed to be some conversation, a meeting rather, this afternoon with the Philadelphia Eagles, who won the Super Bowl. He invites, all the winning teams from all the major sports to come, and there have been obviously a lot of clapback and rejection because of the president's views that a lot of the sports professional league players, whether of color or not, disagreed with the president. So they, either didn't go, but this time the president said that they weren't allowed to come because of the NFL's move about being allowed to take a knee. The NFL actually said that you're not allowed to take a knee on the field. You can take a knee inside in the locker room or in the tunnel, but just not on the field. So there's been just a lot of controversy about the meaning of kneeling during the national anthem and during the flag, and what the implications are. So there's been a lot of conversation about that. There are a lot of people on the player side that say that they're taking a knee not to diss the country or the president or anyone specifically in particular, but more in regard to how people of color are treated by police, by the government. Just a long time of not supremacy, of being a minority in a country that's changing. So there's been a lot of controversy on that. Anyway, sorry for the ramble, but so now they said that they weren't allowed to come, and there were a lot of reporters that were asking questions to Sarah Sanders about that. And there was at one point, though, that the Eagles specifically didn't kneel on the field. They kind of linked arms and stood. There was some footage rolling around from Fox News that showed them kneeling. They were actually praying, so that wasn't the same, the kneel towards the national anthem. So a lot going on there. The president's supposed to be having an event later, I guess around 3, to kind of counter, the kneeling and talk about the importance of the national anthem and kind of have a celebration, he said, for the fans instead of the players. So let's see what I can pull up here. He canceled the Eagles ceremony. So the officials declined immediate comment on the White House version of events. So they're watching the entire Eagles community come together has been an inspiration. The team statement read, "We are truly grateful for the support we have received and are looking forward to continuing our preparations for the 2018 season. So we'll see what happens at this event today. It's supposed to be this afternoon. We'll keep an eye out for that. In other news, there is some continuing conversation about the Russia investigation with the president. Why do I have so many copies here? From Special Counsel Robert Mueller, and he's been accused. Robert Mueller is accusing Paul Manafort of witness tampering. But as I say this, we just got a shot up, I believe is at the White House, of this NFL event. So let's check in with that.
America is a great nation, a community, a family, and America is our home, and we love our home. And our country has never done better than it's doing right now. Never. Record numbers at every outpost. You take a look at what's going on. Lowest unemployment numbers we've had. Lowest African American unemployment in the history of our country. Lowest Hispanic numbers in the history of our country. Lowest numbers for women in 21 years. We've created $7 trillion of value in our country since the election. We're the largest economy in the world and getting a lot larger and fast. It's happened very quickly. Actually, quicker than I even thought. We're doing great. And all of those people that we honor, many of them are looking down right now. Some of them are right here. But many of them are looking down right now at our country, and they are proud. They are very, very proud. So we stand together for freedom. We stand together for patriotism. And we proudly stand for our glorious nation under God. I want to thank you all for being here. This is a beautiful, big celebration. Actually, to be honest, it's even bigger than we had anticipated. So I want to thank you very much, and God bless America. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in honoring our country by singing God Bless America.
The oceans, wide with
Hello, everybody. We just lost that, but they're going to play more music. That was a live shot from the White House lawn. President Trump. President Trump on the White House lawn with the band. So that was like a celebration. President Trump again said that he wanted to celebrate the flag and celebrate the anthem instead of having NFL players come. So there's been a lot of controversy over that. Kneeling and not kneeling and where. So we'll see what comes forward. But that was fun. I thought the president was gonna sing, but he kind of just stood in the middle and
This is the test of the Fox box. This is the test of the Fox box.
So interesting there. Very much like they're having a good time, kind of like a mini July 4th kind of festivity event. Let me see if I can give any more background here. So pull up my notes. So he canceled this meeting just within the past day or so, and so the Eagles weren't going to come. They were upset at the president, and there was all this controversy over kneeling in the NFL. So he announced late Monday that the Super Bowl celebration was off, and instead, this is a celebration of, where are we? We're at a celebration of America and for the national anthem, and you know, there we have it. So I wonder what you guys thought. If anybody has any comments. Should he have had the Eagles anyway? I mean, this is the first time they haven't had the NFL team. I mean, even in the past, there were parts of the team, other players showing up regardless. So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts on that. But there's been obviously a lot of controversy over the anthem. You know, does it stand for the country and the soldiers? There are a lot of people who are in the armed forces that say that, you know, the point of me serving was to, you know, for you to do whatever you like, and, you know, you have the freedom to do that. And then some other people are like, no. So a little bit of a mixed review there. It's getting a little late, but we'll see what's going on for right now. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for checking in with me today, and I think I'll leave you guys here. But thanks all for watching, and Hope everybody has a great rest of their day. Hopefully it's nice out. We've had a lot of rain here in DC. So we're hoping for some better weather, continuing a lot of rain, a lot of wet grounds. So we'll see. Check in tomorrow with me and Molly, and we'll see what's going on next. More the latest with Korea and the president and all that stuff. So, and anything cool and political and just anything that's popping here. So thanks a lot for watching again, and hope everybody has a good rest of their day.